We ARPG fans are so lucky right now. We have plenty of ARPGs that are launching soon, getting huge game-changing updates, or that are just good enough to have a fun time with and pour hundreds of hours of your life into. It's not like this genre hasn't had a lot of attention before, but it's been a long time since the original Diablo launched back in 1997. 26 years of innovation for the genre has created an entire network of different styles of ARPG. Some focus on a story, a creative campaign that draws you in for hours as you try to save the world with a powerful hero. Some focus on a nearly infinite endgame, where you progress as far as you can and test your character building skills against massive endgame bosses. But all of them have a couple of common genre-defining characteristics. A heavy emphasis on stat progression, killing things in mass quantities, and lots of loot. In this video, we're going to talk about some of the top ARPGs in the space, what they excel in, and why you should consider giving them a try. Just to make sure we're all on the same page though, I'm only going to include games from the isometric hack-and-slash loot-based ARPG genre. ARPG, action role-playing game, is a term that can be used to describe pretty much everything, so just keep in mind that I'm looking at games like Diablo, Torchlight, and Titan Quest, and not at other ARPGs like Elden Ring or The Legend of Zelda. If it was up to Steam, about 90% of the gaming world would be ARPGs. Anyway, let's start with the big baddie, the titan of the modern-day ARPG as we know it, Path of Exile. At this point, I don't think you can even talk about the genre if you don't mention PoE. If you're looking for a game that requires you to become an intellectual, study your online guides, and download a highly optimized spreadsheet add-on in order to build a viable character, then look no further. Path of Exile is leading the genre for a reason. It's been around for 10 years now and has taken the Diablo formula and built on it, fleshing out every character customization and stats system in a way that would make mathematicians blush. Over time, it has become more and more complex, but it has continued to push one thing: a sense of accomplishment. When you play Path of Exile, you're treated to a constant gameplay loop of try, fail, learn, and succeed. And you might say, that's what all games do. And you're right. The difference with Path of Exile is the scale at which you experience that gameplay loop. Every single detail of this game is an accomplishment, but it's also an extremely daunting task. Boot up the game, choose a class, beat Hillock, a giant undead monstrosity that acts as the tutorial boss in the very first zone. For a new player, it's not easy. It's a tutorial that you could very well die on. But when you beat him that first time, you get a little rush. You get that sense of accomplishment and you start to crave more. That's 15 minutes or so into the game. As you play more, you'll continue to hit these walls of difficulty or of challenges to overcome. Eventually, the challenges of yesterday become your new tutorial, and that will never stop being the case. On my channel, I have plenty of new player PoE videos documenting my attempts to learn and review this game, and the most common thing I'm told is that the learning doesn't stop at 100, 1,000, 5,000 hours. You will continue to enrich your knowledge and interact with the game in different ways pretty much forever. Probably the most iconic feature of Path of Exile is the skill tree, a web of over 400 skill nodes, each giving some sort of stat benefit to your character. In addition to complexity, there is also an abundance of content to explore. After a 10-act campaign, you are spat out into the endgame, which is a labyrinth of grinding maps, farming currency, constantly crafting and upgrading gear, and fighting difficult boss battles, some of which most players will never see. Everything in Path of Exile is a monumental task, a mountain of progression to climb. But if you stick with it, it'll be hard to find another game that rewards you with as much of a sense of accomplishment and true self-found enjoyment. On top of that, the moment-to-moment gameplay is extremely satisfying and leans into that power fantasy of killing hundreds of things around you with one button. So if you're looking for a new world of content to get lost in, an ARPG that will give you the same feeling of accomplishment and grand adventure that a Dark Souls or Elden Ring would give you, Path of Exile is the game to play. Okay, but what if you don't want to play a game with your brain, but instead with your heart? What if you still enjoy killing monsters in large quantities, but want to be able to understand the character building just through experience, and not be forced to use theory-crafted builds? If you enjoy the act of having fun, without thinking too much about the mechanics behind your fun, then the Diablo series is for you. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but while Path of Exile is known for complicated mechanics and thousands of hours of content you may never finish, the newer Diablo games are known for their smooth combat, polished gameplay, simplified progression, and being made by Blizzard. In all seriousness, Diablo 3 came out in 2012 and it's actually still pretty fun. It doesn't have as much depth as other games and the endgame content is pretty repetitive, but there's a joy to be found in its simplicity. It's just fun, and you don't have to worry about anything else to enjoy it. But even though you can still play it, Diablo 3 is old news, because now, after 11 years, Blizzard is going to be launching Diablo 4, and this time there's a bit more to the game. There will be a good amount of simplified character building, but so far from all the feedback we've been getting from the open betas, Diablo 4 is turning out to be a pretty good game. From what we know, you'll create a character and follow along a story campaign, killing baddies, slaying bosses, and being introduced to new locations and mechanics as you go. There seems to be more of an emphasis on the narrative than some other games in the genre, with cutscenes sprinkled throughout the campaign to act as a storytelling device. The cutscenes are all fully voiced, have stylized, clear graphics, and even star your created characters. The customization includes the class you choose, the skills you use, and the items you loot, so basic ARPG gameplay. Each class will specialize in a type of gameplay, like the Barbarian focusing on the in-your-face melee combat, and the Sorcerer flinging magic everywhere. There are dungeons to dive, quests to complete, and a world to explore, all within the famed Diablo universe. One of the things I'm most looking forward to is the fact that Diablo 4 is entering semi-new territory for the genre and bringing in MMO features like a persistent online world where you can see other players killing things alongside you without them being in the same party. It feels similar to Lost Ark, but with a bit more of an emphasis on the ARPG part and not the MMO. With this comes world bosses, events, party dungeons, and other multiplayer gameplay things, and I think that's pretty cool for a genre that I've primarily experienced as a solo player. Diablo 4 is set to release on June 6th, so if you are interested in Diablo 4 but are still on the fence about it, I suggest waiting till the reviews come out after the game launches. It's a $70 game up front, and regardless of any other monetization in the game, we don't know too much past level 25, so we can't really say if the rest of the game will be worth the money. So far it looks fun. It looks like you will definitely get a good chunk of playing time out of it, but if you're like me and like to make informed decisions about your game purchases, then I'm sure there'll be a large rush of content creators trying to push out first impressions reviews that may give you an idea of whether or not it's worth the buy. Moving on. If you're someone that enjoys casual monster slaying and putting effort into crafting your build, then Last Epoch may be the right fit for you. Last Epoch is the perfect middle ground of the complicated mechanics and stat building of Path of Exile and the casual gameplay and just have fun attitude of the Diablo series. In Last Epoch, you'll take control of a hero that travels through time to save the world and its multiple timelines from destruction. And while I can't say I fully understand the story yet, the concept does give for some amazing shifts in the aesthetic between maps that keeps your senses pleased at all times. This while at the same time watching satisfying spell animations that are mowing down hordes of enemies at your will. Last Epoch's strongest feature is its ability to get players into the game easily and quickly progressing and having fun. This game gives the player possibly the smoothest feeling of progression that you could get from a modern-style ARPG. There is still an emphasis on stat building with skill trees and RNG crafting your loot, but everything is much more accessible to a new or casual player than, say, Path of Exile. Choose your class and that'll determine which set of spells you can mix and match to make your perfect build. Choose your spells and you can specialize in them to make them extremely powerful or tailor them to fit a certain damage type like poison, cold, or fire. Choose a mastery and you'll further specialize your class, giving you more spells and more talents that you can use to customize your gameplay and make your hero godlike. Every point spent on your character tree or in your skill trees is incredibly impactful, with some of them completely changing the way your class or skill plays. I recently made a Beastmaster build where I buffed my pet's damage to the max, but also changed the majority of the damage they dealt to poison. For my class skill tree, I mainly focused on survivability, taking health nodes and damage reduction buff and minion powers. Later on in my build, I also took the aspect of the Viper buff, which gives me and my minions more poison damage. I'm looking for and crafting loot that has strength, poison damage, physical damage, and minion stats. Crafting is easily explained and intuitive, so I didn't have to study to figure out how to craft certain items for my build. And the best part is, if at any point I want to change my entire build and start over, I can. I can change everything about my character except for my mastery, and all I'll lose is some skill points that I can get back pretty easily. And that's it. I just explained my entire character concept and build in a couple minutes. And if you wanted to take my concept and make it your own, you could do so just by using the knowledge the game gives you. You have to think, but you don't have to plan from level 1. You can make a viable build just by trying things out and progressing through the game. I could talk about Last Epoch for hours, but the last thing I want to mention here is that Last Epoch is still in early access. The dev studio behind the game, 11th Hour Games, has been incredibly vocal with their reasoning for updates and has constantly engaged the community to get feedback and listen to suggestions. Out of any game that I have ever played, I have never felt more connected as a player to the Last Epoch team, and I am extremely happy to see how far they have come since my review last year. They've recently put out a multiplayer update, which also included huge additions to gameplay feel and graphics, so if you haven't tried it or it's been a long time since you've checked back in, I highly recommend giving Last Epoch a go. Alright, but what if you want all the fun of a hack and slash ARPG, but miss the old days, where the campaign and exploration of the world were more important than endgame hack and slash grind fests? Grim Dawn is just that. Grim Dawn is a narrative-driven adventure ARPG where you have all the character progression, loot heaven, and ability mixing you could ever dream of. But the biggest draw of Grim Dawn is its expertise in enemy design, world building, and gameplay pacing. Grim Dawn is a spiritual successor to and fine-tuning of the Diablo 2 and Titan Quest formula, so its style is much more that of a classic ARPG. The combat is a bit slower paced, there's an importance on exploration and adventure, and the campaign is what you're playing the game for. Yeah, no focus on endgame here. This ARPG isn't a live service, so the campaign is the meat of the game. Grim Dawn's world is grim, like very grim. Honestly, it's horrible, there's stuff going wrong left and right, but that's what makes the game fun, so I can't complain. Best word to describe everything in this game is impact. No matter what it is, no matter how small or big, everything is impactful. If I want to choose these two classes, it changes my gameplay substantially, it's impactful. If I want to change from using a gun to using a sword, I have to start building my character with physique instead of cunning, but I can do it, which makes it impactful. If I want to hit this dude with a fireball spell and then smash him with a club, it feels impactful. If you happen to use enough of your brain to read all the lore, you'll find that the world is packed to the brim with world-building details that makes every quest you do, every random cave you go into, every zombie you smash, feel impactful. Other than a focus on the campaign, one of the main things that stands out to me about Grim Dawn is the incredibly satisfying character building mechanics. For example, why pick one class when you can pick two? Yep, in Grim Dawn you can specialize in 2 class trees, which gives you your class combination. Warlock, Rogue, Warrior, Wizard, Shaman, Occultist. Whatever combination you want, you can build to become an all-powerful god. But I will say it again, Grim Dawn is not like modern ARPGs. It's not a live service, it's a set game. Some people may not like this, but I think it's kind of a good thing. Grim Dawn has DLC, it has a long campaign with hundreds of hours of gameplay, but it's mostly complete. It came out in 2016, and other than the DLC that has already come out, it won't change much going forward. You can take your time and really enjoy the game. If you play and want to take a break, you can come back whenever you like, and your character will be just as strong or just as terrible as it was when you left. In a world where most games are online and constantly changing, this concept is pretty comforting. Alright, I talked too much and this video is getting long, so I'm going to go ahead and rapid fire the rest of these. All of these games are worth giving a look, as they are some of the best the genre has to offer. Lost Ark may have launched as a pay-to-win, bot-infested mess, but that doesn't mean that the gameplay isn't pretty amazing. Lost Ark is an MMO ARPG with a dedicated community and player base. It has its quirks for sure, but the game has a rewarding gameplay loop that involves intense battles, smooth action combat, and a very diverse set of challenges and features to keep your attention. As long as you make sure to keep your eyes on your bank account at all times, you'll have a great game to enjoy on your own or with friends. It's free to play and on Steam. Wolcen is a story-driven ARPG, a lot like Diablo 3. However, there's a bit more depth here. With fast-paced combat and a weapon skill system that defines your class, there's enough customization to let your imagination run wild. While the mechanics are a little clunky, the main draw of the game is its narrative campaign, which has an attention-grabbing story, professional voice acting with some great performances, and in-game cutscenes that help to establish the world and gives the player a compelling reason to be the hero and complete the story. Wolcen had a pretty terrible launch, but the devs are working on addressing these issues and just launched a new update which added some content to the endgame. It's $40 on Steam, but regularly goes on sale. Chronicon is a retro pixel art ARPG filled to the brim with charming visuals and intense gameplay. If you haven't heard of this one before, well, that's probably because the game was basically made by 2 people, released on Steam in 2020, and has had continuous support since then without much marketing to speak of. However, the Steam user reviews speak a different story, comparing this game to the big boys like Path of Exile, Last Epoch, and Grim Dawn. Best of all, Chronicon is only $14 for 4 unique classes, a 5-act campaign, 900 skills, abilities, and perks to improve, co-op modes, and a number of quality of life features that allow fun to be the predominant aspect of the game. Last but not least, we have Warhammer 40k Inquisitor Martyr, an ARPG that is basically a mix between Diablo and the Warhammer 40k universe. The combat in this game is intense, and boasts the addition of the cover system, which is the ability to take cover behind obstacles as a defensive maneuver. As an ARPG, that doesn't come into play all that much, and definitely isn't 100% necessary to use, but it does show that the devs behind the game are trying to find a way to innovate and make the game stand out in the ARPG genre. Players will follow along a story-driven campaign with an incredibly grim and dark atmosphere, in which you take part in a variety of tactical missions, brutal combat encounters, and exploration around the galaxy. Currently, you can pick up Inquisitor Martyr on Steam for $50. If I didn't name your favorite ARPG, be sure to let me know which one and why you think it should be named as one of the best games in the genre right now. I personally am always looking to add to my growing list of games on Steam. And of course, we can't forget that you can still play the classics like Titan Quest, Torchlight 2, and Diablo 2 Resurrected, as all 3 of them are available through Steam or the Blizzard store. Either way, I hope you were able to find at least one game on this list that you may want to try out in 2023, but most importantly, I hope you enjoyed the video. Leave a like if you liked it and subscribe for more content. I hope you enjoy your hack and slash isometric loot ARPGs, and I can't wait to see what we talk about next.